We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. Welcome back to Paring Down. Today's episode, I can say, actually has changed my life in the last couple of weeks since we recorded it. And I'm not being dramatic. We're talking about minimizing or organizing our digital spaces today. And as you're going to hear throughout this episode, this is something that I am certainly no expert in. And yet the things that our guest, Shawn Lemon, shared with me, I went ahead and implemented that night because I was like, oh, this feels really doable the way that he explained it. And now my Gmail and my computer are a different place. It is just the best thing ever. And so I hope that you really enjoy the practical advice that he gives in this episode and can apply it to your own life too, because it is life-changing. So let me tell you a little bit about Shawn. Shawn is the founder of The Digital Organizer and has spent the last 17 years helping individuals and businesses get better at using their technology. A teacher at heart, Shawn believes that the biggest reason people struggle with their tech is because of a lack of understanding of the tools, which isn't surprising because they're constantly changing as technology advances. When not helping businesses operate more efficiently, Shawn loves making pottery, riding motorcycles, and spending time with his wife, Madeline, and their 2-year-old son, Nico. So please enjoy this episode with Shawn Lemon of The Digital Organizer. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This is an episode that has been honestly a long time coming. So it is about time we cover some digital clutter. So thank you so much for being here.
Man, thanks for having me, Shannon. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't realize that saying cover and clutter in the same sentence was going to be a challenge for me here. But would you introduce yourself to everybody and tell them a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Shawn Shawn Lemon, and I'm the founder of The Digital Organizer, and we're all about transforming chaos to order. So many people are struggling with their digital space, can't find what they're looking for, and it's like the frog in the pot. It's just, everything has just grown up and advanced so much, and so many people, it's just hitting a tipping point where things are just really overwhelming. We come in, clear that out, teach people how to do it, so you have peace of mind and can actually get your work done and stop fighting with technology.
I mean, that's the dream, right? I feel like so much of the time we know technology is a good thing, but everyone's always kind of, pulling their hair out over it because you're like,
Right.
Where did it even save that file? And then you're trying to search for it and you don't know what
Yeah.
it saved it as. And like it goes with that. And then we never delete anything because that feels like such a pain. And next thing you know, our computers and our phones are just an absolute, landfill of ridiculousness. So I'm so excited to get all of the practical info from you today too. But let's start with why this is so important to cover. Why do you think, first of all, that people hold on to digital items like emails and photos, files, even more than physical clutter?
Yeah. Well, it's because it's easy to keep it, and we've been encouraged to keep everything, because what happens when you run out of space? You got to buy more. And so the platforms want you to store a whole bunch of stuff. They want you to be able to search everything, and Gmail defaults to archiving instead of deleting so that everything piles up. And they have good tools, and I'll send you some videos if you guys want on how to clean up your Gmail account so fast. And it's cool that they have that, but even still, we don't need all of this stuff. And we've just been encouraged to save it. And we've got this mentality of wanting to create this whole second brain and keep all of the resources that we've come across, because that's how our brains work. But in the end, information is so readily available. Why do we need to keep all of this stuff? So we love to help people purge, because it becomes overwhelming. Then you can't find what you're looking for. And then now it's help me, asking AI, what's in this folder? We shouldn't have to ask AI what's in a folder or what's in a file. We should know what it is by the name, and we can find what we're looking for in seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you heard of the term informavores?
No, but
Oh,
I
okay.
like it
So I,
already.
I just, what you were talking about just reminded me of what I read in Scarcity Brain by Michael Easter recently. And it's this term informavore, which was coined by some either, social economist or something like
Sure.
that. But basically, it's that we are hardwired as human beings to devour information, right?
Right.
Because looking back, even historically, that kept us alive. It
Uh-huh.
was important for us to learn new information. But the problem is that now in every aspect, whether it's physical clutter or, as you pointed out, it's the same with digital clutter, the consumer society we live in has now latched on to the fact that we are informavores, that we do want to know more and hold on to more and try more things. And they use that as a form of the attention economy. So they keep
Hmm.
us keeping more, looking at more, consuming more, so that they can make the big bucks, right? And
Totally.
I hate to always just be like, it's the problem with consumerism, like as if that's the answer to everything. But it is interesting how it's woven into nearly every aspect of our lives. And we have to be aware of how we are created as human beings to want that information. So it's not like there's something wrong with us because we want to hold on to all this
Right.
stuff. That's a
Right.
natural feeling.
That's right. It's totally natural to want to do that. It's appropriate for the development of our brains, and yet, just as you said, everything is being created to capture your attention, keep you pulled into the platform, whether it's free or paid. Paid, they're going to have retention. If it's free, they're getting paid by ads that they're being served to you, and so every ad that you're exposed to, they get a paycheck over and over, and they maybe fractions of a cent, but across hundreds of millions of accounts, it truly adds up. And we have these tech behemoths. But yeah, it's pretty frustrating. And so much of what we're trying to do is create a digital space that promotes focus, and realize when we are compulsively checking something, we may need to get that off your phone. I don't have email on my phone. I don't have social media on my phone. There's a lot of stuff that I just have to, if I find myself compulsively checking an app, it's got to go, because I just can't stay sucked into this technology all day long and pulling me in, because it's how our brains work. It becomes addicted, and we just want to keep going, even though another part of us doesn't.
Isn't that the thing, though?
Hmm.
This is very sad to me, but my 7-year-old son, he's like, Mom, I want a phone. And I was like, no, because I openly am like anti
Yeah.
phones for
Yeah.
kids and even for teenagers. And so to hear my 7-year-old say that, I was like, why? Like, why would you say that?
Yeah.
And and he was like, well, I just think it'd be fun to text you. He just learned how to write. And
Uh-huh.
I've shown him how to text. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm texting daddy. And he's like, oh,
Yeah.
let me see, because he can read it now. And so do you want to
Yes.
try typing it? So he sees that. And so to him, it's that innocent, right? Like, I want to be able to
Hmm.
text daddy. But uh, I even said to him, I said, hey, bud, sometimes I don't even want my phone anymore
Hmm.
because I feel like I use it too much. And sometimes I feel like I can't stop. Like you
Yeah.
see how mommy puts it down to read my books and to play with you and to eat dinner as a family. He knows, phones aren't on the table. I said, but sometimes that feels hard. And sometimes I just wish it wasn't there to begin with. And so what you're saying is so true. We feel this like weird push and pull that we can't stop. It's like when you're overeating, you're like, I don't want to be eating this last piece of cake, but
Yeah.
yet I'm eating it.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Totally. It's designed to do that. And have you heard of The Anxious Generation?
No.
It's a new book. A lot of people are talking about it right now. But at least in the technology space and kids and everything, we've got enough studies to see what the effects are on our children and society as a whole. But really, this is focusing in on kids and talking about uh, kids who grew up with this technology, and at least in their formative years, of how it's affecting them in a lot of different ways, but basically highlights it and tells you why you probably shouldn't want to give tech to a lot of these kids and what age appropriate is, and kind of talking about some of the problems and how we can solve them, and things like that. But it was really eye opening to how it's affecting us, but then also affecting the next generation, and realizing we've got to change some stuff, and it's not a good idea to give unfettered access to the internet, and some of these different things.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that that comes up in this conversation that's going to be not heavily involved with social media, right? Like what we're going to be
Right.
talking about today is more files and
Right.
emails and that kind of thing, but it is interwoven. I think social media has gotten a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It's obviously more pervasive in many ways.
Hmm.
However, the effects are similar, like you said, when you're getting the ding of an email or when you're trying to find important information and it's drowned out by the digital clutter. It's very overwhelming for our brains and can cause that same level of anxiety.
Yeah.
And before we talk about some of those like kind of emotional attachments we have to information, can you share what your experience has been, like how you fell into this field and why it's so important to you personally?
Yeah, totally. So I grew up with technology to an extent. I mean, I think last year of grade school, we really started having better and starting to get faster dial up. So I grew up with all of that, and my dad, making sure that I knew how to use it and everything. And so I've always just been curious about software and computers, and how to, not how they work as in all of the hardware and what each thing does, but how do we use it to make something, to create something, or communicate and things like that. So when I got my first job or internship, it was at video editing, and I got my first Mac and just dove in, and just learned so much. And then people started asking how to do things. And so I started reading all the help menus and then building these little guides and everything like that. And eventually that led me to working at the Apple Store for 7 years. And I taught people how to use their tech. And during that experience, I found so many people would buy new computers. They would drop off their old and new one to the Genius Bar, have them transfer the data, and then come sit down for a lesson with me or one of my coworkers. And many of them were just completely overwhelmed by the mess that just got transferred from their Windows machine to their Mac, and they couldn't learn in the midst of the mess. And it was just so overwhelming. They didn't really know what to do. And people started asking, can you come to my house? Can you help me get control of this? And actually, yeah. So give them a little leg up. And so I started doing that on the side, and it became a full-time business 11 years ago.
Wow. What a great story of how that just organically came about because you
Yeah.
saw the need right in front of you. And
Hmm.
it's so true. I mean, I joke about it because it is so overwhelming to me that there's a reason I've had this podcast now for over a year and I haven't tackled this kind of a subject is because
Yeah.
it overwhelms me. I'm like, I cannot
Yeah.
help someone. I need a professional here, And I
Uh-huh.
always say to my husband, like, can you figure this out on the computer, or can you find where this should go and where I should save it? What kind of hard drive I should have for the
Yeah.
backup of all of these podcast episodes I'm making right now. For me personally, that's taking up space on my computer, but I don't want to lose these episodes. And what's the best place to store them? All of these practical questions that it's
Hmm.
just so overwhelming to me that I'm like, I can't. And I'm pretty organized, right? Like my
Yeah.
folders are pretty good. Not going to lie to you. I have pretty
Yeah.
good folder organization and
Good.
like titling. We're going to get
Uh-huh.
into all of these practical things, by the way, everyone, because Shawn is obviously going to be able to help us figure out if I think I'm doing a good job, but we're going to actually find out if I'm doing a good
All
job.
right.
But, I think that so many of us do feel that tremendous overwhelm. And many of us don't even know that there is a resource like you out there
Right.
that can teach this. So I'm really excited to expose everyone to you today. So let's get back, though, just a little bit into the mental load and the emotional attachment
Hmm.
to information that we save, whether it is an email that it could be a personal email. Someone sent you something really nice
Yeah.
and you want to hold on to that.
Hmm.
I'm in the email space right now in my head.
Yeah.
Or they sent you an article you've been meaning to read for the last 3 years.
Hmm.
It's longer than that. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to actually look in my little browser right now. I have an email, Shawn, please don't judge me, okay, from 2017 that my brother sent me. And it has an article in it that I still want to read. So I have not deleted that email, but I have not read that article. And I am confessing that to you and to my brother in the world right now. You know what I mean? And so we're
Yeah.
holding on to this stuff, and some of it's valid. Like maybe you want to keep an email from a loved one
Sure.
as a sentimental item,
Right.
or we get these tax emails,
Mm-hmm.
and we think it's important to hold on to that.
Right.
But before we get into the practicalities of actually what to do with those things, can you speak to what that does to our mental load to keep all of those things right in front of us?
Yeah. Well, what it's doing is splitting your attention. And so if we think of our attention and relate it to something physical, let's think of it as a stage. And the more things that you bring up, so seeing those articles, seeing, files on your desktop, pop-ups from all kinds of things, just having a ton of different tabs open. Everything that you're seeing, your brain looks at, and it lights up that neural network, and it's trying to make connections. And so what it's doing is every little idea or every tab that you're seeing or file or, to-do item, it's all bringing another character onto the stage. And the more characters we have on the stage, we don't know which one we're supposed to focus on. Or if there's someone having a conversation and you're really supposed to be watching that, but then there's all of these other conversations happening, it's very hard to pay attention. How much harder is it to pay attention in a very noisy room to someone versus sitting in a quiet room and you're just having a nice conversation next to a fire with a cup of coffee? It's way easier to do that. And you're going to be way more drained after leaving a busy space and trying to block out all of this other noise. That's what's happening all day, every day. And if you got 30,000 unread emails in your inbox, that's 30,000 to-dos that your brain thinks of and that you are consciously trying to ignore. And most people are just so used to it, they don't realize how much anxiety it's giving them until it all goes away. The shock we see on people's faces who resist, clearing things out and getting to inbox zero is just like, oh, I just need a good folder system. It's not about a folder system. We've got to get things out of our view. And then the breath of fresh air happens. And then we realize, whoa, that was intense.
That makes so much sense. You said that in such a way that resonated with me. And even as, I can kind of make the analogy to, I have found that if I even have my phone near me when I'm trying to pick up a book, it is so much harder for me to concentrate on the pages in front of me. I have to put my phone in another room or in a drawer. And I like to read. I want to read. I'm actively making that choice to read.
Yeah.
But when you have something else there that says, you could be looking at me, you know what I mean? Like that is so hard. And it's why I think a lot of our students struggle when they're taking online classes because they have other browsers open versus just only focusing on, what's in front of them, their teacher.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up. And I think that really will make people understand why we want to take the steps that you're going to lay out here for us. So where to dive in, Shawn? Let's start with some basic tools that we can use to organize digital folders. Let's start with folders and files on our computer or maybe even on our phone. Those attachments, those important documents. I don't know, the vet sent you your dog's vaccination records. Personally, what do we do with it all?
Yeah. So first off, let's go back to email for just a second.
Okay, great.
Email has become a communication platform, a place to store files, so a file storage platform. It's become a to-do list, reminder system. Email is designed to be a communication tool. So when we get those tax documents, when we get attachments, photos, important information, even an article that you may want to read, we need to get it out of email because that's for communicating. So we need to save that in our folder structure. I don't want you to organize your email. It's just
Interesting.
communication. If someone's like, hey, do you have that thing from so and so? You can search that thing from so and so. You've got an idea of what you're looking for. You can search for it the majority of the time. There are certain scenarios where it makes sense to have folders, but the majority of the time, we shouldn't be keeping this. Let's get the critical piece of information out of email and saved in the files. Or if it's a to do item that we can't do right away, we need to have it in some other list that we actually rely on and look at for our to-dos so that things don't just pile up in email that you can't deal with right away. So we really want to get that stuff out of email so that we only have one place for our files. And so that's really the first step in file organization is
Okay.
consolidating.
I have a question real fast.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to interrupt, but when you were saying, to go in and search, are you saying we shouldn't be going into our emails and like searching for past emails? The emails should be deleted completely and that search should take place in a different organized area of our computer or phone?
No, if it's a piece of communication, or if it's an email that you think you may want to look for again, you archive it. If it's something that, if it's a file that got emailed to you, that file needs to be downloaded so that it can live in your file system. The photo needs to come out of there and put in your Photos app or in the folder that you store your photos, not having an email folder dedicated for photos that you have to go there to see some pictures, then you go somewhere else to see the other pictures.
Gotcha. Okay. Continue forth. All right. So we've talked
Cool.
about that.
Yeah. So as far as the process of organizing files, and by the way, I have a guide for you. We're going to put it in the show notes, but it's a whole file organization guide. So everything that I'm talking about, I've got videos that explain it further. I'm going to take you through the whole process. It's all free. I'm just going to give this to you if you want to self-implement. So we need to create a dedicated space, just like we do in physical spaces. This is where we put the plates, the bowls, the cups, so we always know where to go, and we're keeping all of our dinnerware in the kitchen. We need to do that same thing in a digital space. So we need to decide what platform we want to use. Is it iCloud because you're a total Apple nerd and you're not collaborating with business, you're just using personally? Sure, use iCloud. You're working in business, maybe you've got your stuff in Google Workspace. Maybe we should put everything in Google Workspace and Google Drive. Pick the platform and consolidate everything there. Get it out of email, get it out of Dropbox and all the other places and in one spot. Now we can go in, purge, archive, restructure, rename our files, and go through this process so that we can find what we're looking for really fast.
Ooh, just that piece of advice to all have it in one spot. It's so obvious, but also not. I think, okay, so tell me if this is problematic, the way
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it, which I feel like it is, if
Sure.
we're being honest.
Yeah.
I have two spots. So I use like Google Drive,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I keep most things for paring down and
Yeah.
for I have folders on there, and then I have like within my paring down folder I have like my book proposal, and I have interview questions, I have
Mm-hmm.
partnership scripts, like that kind of stuff, those
Yep.
different things in there. But I also have folders on my computer, so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm saving like any contracts. I'm saving to a folder on my computer,
Okay.
or my these interviews that are recorded, I
Mm-hmm.
download to my computer and they are saved in a folder on my computer. Should all of that be in either my computer folders or the drive?
Yeah, I'd put it in the drive.
Oh,
Yeah,
even
I put it.
documents and stuff like that.
Yeah. I put all of it in there. You can back up your Google Drive. You can back up your Dropbox to things like Synology, a network attached storage device. You can back it up to another cloud service like AFI.ai or Spanning Sync. There's all these tools that we can use to back up our cloud or our cloud accounts. We can also download them, to our machine as well. But I do want to put all of that stuff in there because if you decide you want someone else to start editing your podcast, do you want to have to go and upload all of that stuff there? If you have somebody that's going to do social media for you, or maybe you're going to hire someone to create more content, and so they need access to all of your past podcast recordings and things like that to pull from as more content, you don't want to have to upload all of that. let's just have one place for all of paring down. Now, if you
Hmm.
want to keep your personal stuff separate, then that makes sense. Have that on your desktop or put that in your personal Google Drive versus a Google Workspace. So it's just, for us, I don't have a one way fits all for this because we each have our different tendencies. I like everything in Google. Some people want their personal stuff in iCloud and then they want their work stuff in Google or in SharePoint or whatever. So it's what makes sense to you. The main thing is I want everything that you need to work on a project or work on a recurring responsibility like, doing your expenses at the end of the month or something like that to be so easy, because when you go down or sit down to do this task, you have everything that you need right there and you don't have to look in multiple places.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that sounds like the dream, What do we do when it gets a little bit complicated here? And I
Hmm.
am going to continue using my own examples just because
Please,
that's
yeah.
my life. And I think that a lot of us, even if my examples aren't exactly how you operate, there's probably something similar to how different people are doing things
Yeah.
that we can all relate to. So when it comes to, for me, it gets complicated when I need to use email correctly for communication and
Hmm.
attach a file,
Yeah.
or I need to, let's say I'm writing my blog and I need to upload a photo, right?
Hmm.
And so I send a photo from my phone to
Hmm.
my computer. I like airdrop it, and
Hmm.
then it's on my desktop or in downloads, and I upload it into Squarespace for my
Hmm.
blog post.
Yeah.
Now, for that situation where I don't need to keep that photo on my computer, I should theoretically go and delete it. But let's say it is, I need to send the vaccination to the new vet or whatever.
Hmm.
So I feel like in order to attach it, it has to come from my computer, because when you say push attachment, then you browse your files on your computer. Or is there an option to browse your Google Drive instead? Have I just missed that completely?
You can.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you
I am
can. You
stuck in
can
the
you can
1800s.
install the Google Drive app on your phone, and the Files app for iPhone can access what's in Google Drive, or you can go in and copy the attachment, say send a copy, and then it says where do how do you want to send it, and then you can pick whichever email app you like to use, and that'll compose a new message and attach it for you. So that's one of the other reasons why I like using cloud accounts, and that may be iCloud. You let iCloud sync the contents of your desktop and documents so that they're accessible on your phone. So I'm doing that. Even though the majority of my stuff is in iCloud, I will occasionally dump something on my desktop temporarily. I exported a Google Sheet into an Excel document to upload into ChatGPT to help me with some specific formulas, really complex formulas that I don't know how to do, but it does. And
Right.
so that's just dumped on my desktop temporarily. And then once I'm finished with that, I'm just going to go ahead and toss it
I
because the,
think that's
the, the
key.
live copy is in Google Drive.
Right. So when you do have to kind of maneuver a little bit, if something needs to go on your desktop before it goes elsewhere, the key is that decluttering piece to actually
Yes.
get rid of what you don't need where you don't need it. Hey guys, it's time for your ad break. Each week I like to say a huge thank you for your graciousness that these are part of the podcast. Here we go. So, can you speak to that piece a little bit more of kind of how to determine even what we should be keeping, no matter
Hmm.
where we're keeping it? How do we know what we should be holding on to? And is there a good process for going through and deleting the things we don't need?
Yeah. So a couple of good points in there. So first off, if you look at something, it's am I ever going to need this again? Am I ever going to look at this again? And when you're first doing this, you're probably going to, well, it depends on the personality. Some people are they'll just go in and start deleting too much. Others, like me, default to keeping things just in case. So, um, the first thing that we always do is consolidate and then go and do a deletion pass. What's obvious that you can delete? Just start with that. I don't need you like going in and looking on all of your files. If you can just look at it and see, oh, I don't need that. I'm seeing contractor onboarding CSV on my desktop and another Excel sheet, I know I can delete both of those. Those were something that I was working on yesterday, and I just didn't toss them off of my desktop. Can we just quickly identify it and delete that stuff? After that, we can go in and start looking at some things and start creating a deep archive. We'll call this like the deep freezer. So it's very unlikely you're ever going to look at it again, but you're not willing to delete it. So let's pull all of that out and put it into a separate place that's not going to be in our main filing system. And what you'll realize is that's a lot of content that you're truly not going to use. So let's pull all of that stuff aside. And now what we have are the things that you will actually look at. If we apply the 80-20 rule, it's going to be 20% of what you've got. Probably a whole lot less are the things that you actively work on and need. Then we create a different, more practical archiving system. When the blog post is up and published and everything is done, we can move that into published. And then all the others that are queued up and being written, those are at the top level. You open up, blog posts, there's the stuff that's upcoming. And then you go into a folder to find all of the ones that are completed. And that's your archive for newsletters. So we don't have to create a ton of subfolders in our blog post. I think I might have interchanged blog and newsletter.
No, it's fine. It was easy to follow. No problem.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great advice. I kind of love how you give permission for us to not have to make all these decisions about things we're not sure about. And instead of micro organizing all of those into tedious files, I think that's the overwhelming part. People are like, oh, I'm going to have to go back and look at thousands upon thousands upon thousands. But if you can quickly be like, you can identify the trash, and then you, with the maybes, you just go ahead and like not organize them super well, but just put them all in one place, like a maybe pile.
Right.
Man, that feels so much less overwhelming, so that we can focus and use the energy we do need to micro organize a little bit more the things that we're going to use every day that will be really great to have micro organized, like just like your physical clutter. Like I want my forks and my spoons to be separated. You know what I mean? Like that's very important to me. But if you're doing a toy rotation for your kids, just put them all in a box, and that's fine, and visit them in April.
Right.
So no, that feels much less overwhelming when you put it that way. Okay. So
real quick, the amount of people who have ADHD, these are the ones who are having the hardest time organizing all of this, and the amount of people who are undiagnosed with it or just getting it. I just found out, and it's like, oh, no wonder I've clung to systems and created all this stuff, because if I don't have a specific system to do this, I spin out. And if I have to organize thousands of files, then I spin out and then I go through one by one by one. And it's just this hyper focus on individual things instead of being able to do the macro. So as quickly as possible, let's get stuff, use a gut reaction to get stuff out of our view, set it aside so that when we get into doing the details, it's on a much smaller scope than trying to do everything all at once. And then if we want to go back in and deal with the archive, that deep freeze later, we can do that. And we've got all of this experience of organizing critical files, and we can apply that to our archive. And what you'll find is you end up deleting a lot of stuff in the deep freeze after a while. Like, I'm truly never going to look at this. I might as well get rid of it.
I think in old school, and maybe it's not old school, I know nothing, honestly, but to me, in my brain, it thinks old school way of getting rid of that maybe pile is to put it all on a hard drive. And in my head, that to me feels like it's just going to go die in a box in the closet, and we're never going to look at it again. What are your thoughts on storing things on hard drives, like USB discs or whatever they're called, that you plug in, or we have like this big orange one that I used to put all these videos on. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. It feels like a good idea at first, but then 2 years later, you plug in that drive and wonder, what's on here? Is this in my other filing system? What's here and what's there? And so then most people just don't make a decision. It feels overwhelming and move on. And then really that data just dies.
Right? Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So the flash drives, they're a horrible place to store things. Those are really for temporary files. Those have flash drives or little chips in them, and those hold on to data through energy. And so if you put something on that stick and then you leave it in a drawer for years and it doesn't get juiced up again by plugging it in, then the data can just start corrupting, and it just starts forgetting some of the pieces of that information, in which case it can corrupt a file. So it's not good for long-term storage. Actually, CDs and DVDs, they degrade as well. That's why they're different levels, or at least used to be, of these are archive worthy, and they're more expensive because it's higher quality material.
Wait, why don't we know this? We think if it is stored like invisibly on this little piece of machinery that it will be there forever. And you're saying
Yeah.
that's not true.
No, and I forget who told me about that, but it's someone in the, in the tech space, maybe a genius or something like that, or one of the companies that would talk to the Apple Store about data recovery and stuff like that. And I came across it, and that blew my mind too. It's like, wait, what? No wonder. And yeah, it's crazy. Heat can degrade the CDs, and then you plug it in. I had pictures that I had accidentally deleted on a hard drive that I put in a closet for years, and I plugged it in. It's like, I haven't looked at any of this stuff in years. I don't need any of this. Delete. That was in the afternoon. At night, I'm watching a movie, and then all of a sudden, it was, oh my God. And my wife's like, what? It's like, I just deleted all of my photos before 2009. Everything before 2009, I trashed by accident because it was on a hard drive that I thought was somewhere else. So
Yeah.
I don't like setting stuff aside and thinking, oh, I'm going to remember later. If so, create a sticky note or a sheet of paper and detail out what's on this drive, why it's here, all of the different things, and then tape it to that drive. So when you pull it out again, you know what's on there, and you can say, okay, half of this is a copy, but these are the files that I don't have elsewhere. But what I did is I just grabbed all of that stuff and I dumped it into my Google Drive, because I have tons of space in my Google Drive. I pay for extra. And so I just put it all in there so that I know this is and there's a specific folder that's old archive stuff. And then there are other, my personal files, then my business files, and they're all separated and nice and neat.
Thank you. That was so insightful. Okay. So we've dabbled, there's just so much here, right? There's only so much we can cover in a 45-minute episode, but we've dabbled in kind of best practices for emails and total light bulb moment that emails for communication, not for storage, because I use it as a notes app. I use it as, I use it as all of these different things. Yeah. So I love that clear. It's like knowing it's zoning down the room. What is your bedroom for, right? It's for rest and where you get dressed. If something does not fall into that category, it does not belong in the bedroom. Just the same thing as an email. Like if it doesn't fall into a communication category, it doesn't belong there. It's just a very clear thing. I love that. We dabbled on what to do with all of our different files. I would love though for you to share where people should start. They're like, I know I have a bunch of stuff on my computer. I know I have a bunch of stuff in my email, like all of this different digital stuff. Where do you suggest beginning?
Usually it's starting with email, because email is usually the thing that's causing the most anxiety, because it's this constant deluge of information, to-dos, whatever. Email, we like to say, is a to-do list that anyone can populate. So we really want to get that under control. And usually by starting there, that allows for more focus and clarity, less anxiety, and more just mental resources and time to then go in and start applying these same principles to your files and consolidating your to-do lists and, getting your passwords upgraded and actually put in a password management system and things like that. But while that's typically the starting place, I think the best place to start is the one that's causing you the most anxiety and frustration. Get that under control first, and then it's going to snowball into other things. Once you start seeing progress and have momentum, that is what gives people motivation. And
Okay.
so, starting there, and we've got a quiz on our website that'll, you can take, and it'll show you, kind of score you on how effective each one of the 4 areas that we touch on, how you score, and can also give you a starting place as well if you're just not sure.
Oh, amazing. I'll make sure that obviously your website will be linked, but then I will go find the quiz link too and have that direct in the show notes. Okay, so let's say we start with email. What do we
hmm
do? I open my email and I'm like, okay, Shawn Lemon told me to declutter this. What, like, literally, what do I click on?
The first thing to do is declare email bankruptcy and pick a cutoff date, because just like I want you to move all of the archive material out of your folder structure, so that you can focus on the few things that are actually applicable, and then we have a much more uh, manageable task. I want to do that for email as well. Typically, that's a 30-day cutoff point. So we archive everything that's older than 30 days. And when you sign up for the file organization resource, I'm going to send you some videos of how to do this archive past 30 days, and then successfully unsubscribing. That's step 2 of actually going through the last 30 days. What are the subscriptions that I'm on that I need to get rid of? And we need to be ruthless about this, because this is your attention, and this is what is causing all the clutter, and why things are falling through the cracks is good emails are mixed in with all of this other stuff. So
Mhm.
get rid of everything older than 30 days. Get rid of the newsletters, unsubscribe manually. I'll show you how to do it. That actually works in that video that I'll send you. And then after that, let's do a deletion pass. What am I never going to look at again? Now, what's taken care of or doesn't need to have any response? Let's archive all of that. Now what we're left with are good emails from people that need to be responded to. So
Okay, so when you're talking about all these, are these things that are unopened that you're talking about? Because,
unopened
or
and opened. Usually it's a mix. Some people think that everything is okay and their email is good because they don't have anything unread, but they've got 30,000 emails in their inbox.
okay,
That
that's
is
me.
still causing anxiety. Yeah.
Okay, yes, because I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm not doing great. I have 98 that I've kept unread. I only have probably 7 that are active, and then the rest I'm holding on to because I'm like, oh, this is our confirmation email
Yeah.
for our spring break trip, and this
Yeah.
is our my booking confirmation for dance class, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. That's
Uh-huh.
what. So I have 98 unread. I have 7,611. Sorry, those were read or unread, and then read that's still there. 7,611 emails because I don't delete them. Sometimes I do, but for the
hmm
most part, I open it. If I don't need it anymore,
Yeah.
I move on to the next thing, and it's just
Instead,
there.
archive it.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
should
Because
bulk
it's,
action all of those unreads. I should go ahead and bulk action archive.
yeah.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
that's my first step.
Yeah, yeah, just archive it. Because the thing is, you're not going to scroll through 7,000 emails to find what you're looking for. You're going to
No,
search.
correct.
So, and then, for the upcoming trip, I do like to create a folder for a trip that's coming up, and then just put the email for the rental car with the confirmation code that I'm going to need at the counter. That's the email I put in that folder for the trip. Though the rental car company is going to send me, 3, 4 different emails, I only need the one when I'm at the counter. I only need the one for my flight in case the ticket in my Apple Wallet doesn't work right. So I want to set that aside. We don't need absolutely every email to do with that trip organized in one place, just the pieces that we might need right when we're standing at the counter.
What folder do you put them in?
So you can just create a folder called,
Like on
2025
Google
Spring Break.
Drive? On
What's
the
that?
drive? On the drive or within email?
Within email.
Oh, I never even I know this sounds crazy, but I've never even thought about creating another folder in email. Where do you even create another folder in
In
email?
Gmail, it's called a label. It's not a folder.
Oh,
That's the thing that,
labels.
yeah. Yeah, so you just create a label, and then you toss the emails in there that you might need. And when the trip is over, you just delete the label, and it keeps the emails. It just deletes the label. And so now we don't need to see it anymore. It's just set aside temporarily. I just don't like to, people to have 30 different labels on the sidebar and feel like they have to organize every single conversation that comes in. It's just not necessary. It causes more work. And then if you don't do it perfectly and you got a perfectionist on your hands, then they just eventually let it go, or they're, caught up in organizing things that really aren't important, wasting time.
Oh my gosh. You just changed my whole life. That's so exciting. I just like my brain has never I've never even looked at that word label. I would not have been able to tell you to save my life that the word labels was on the left-hand side of my Gmail screen, even though I open it every single day of my life.
Isn't
So
it funny how we just become blind to things that we see constantly?
it's wild. It's really wild. Okay. That's amazing. Let's talk about quickly here at the end. And there's just so much. But I'm curious how to organize our files or our emails that are shared or should be shared
Yeah.
with our partner.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 kids that are very young, and there's a lot of scheduling stuff. There's a lot of billing stuff. There's a lot of things that both of us need to be aware of. What
Mm-hmm.
is the best practice for that?
Well, since we're at the end, I've got a guide for this too. And so while the main download is going to be file organization, anyone listening, if you want this, reply to one of the emails that we send you after you sign up for that resource, and I'll give you that guide as well. But the main thing is figuring out what's a shared platform between your household. So usually everyone has a Gmail account, and especially kids in school, like they all get Google accounts for, Google Classroom. It's really easy to work in that environment. So what I like to do is have family members share their calendars with each other. And so you don't have to give edit permission, but you can just have view permission. And so everyone can see what's going on. I like to create a family calendar that's just, hey, this is what we're putting on. And everyone sees that on Saturday, we're going to grandma's house. So, and have that sort of thing. And then occasionally, what some people choose to do is create an email address that is dedicated for the family. So we give that to our schools, we give it to our doctors, and all of the people that have to do with the family. And so it's just coming into one place. So that's a strategy that some people employ as well.
Which is so smart. I could see it being slightly tricky if like your spouse opens an email in the family one and
Mm-hmm.
then you didn't, and so you're like, I didn't see that or
Yep.
whatever. But it's also such a brilliant idea so that everything, like you said, everyone sees everything
Mm-hmm.
in one place. I love that. And then this would probably also be beneficial, like using the drive, how you had encouraged me to kind of move more of my files onto the drive because I'm comfortable with that platform,
Yeah.
whatever platform people are comfortable with.
Uh-huh.
And just creating I create shared folders all the time. Like
Yeah.
when I, work in freelance and
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing consultation work with someone, like we have a shared folder where
Yeah.
that stuff lives. I could just do that with my husband. Why haven't I
Totally.
done that?
Yeah, I've got a folder called Family, and Family is shared with my wife, Madeline. And inside of Family are health records, important docs. And that's like marriage certificate, driver's license, pictures of social security cards, stuff like that. And by the way, if you're going to put sensitive information in there, then you need to make sure that you're using two-step verification. You're not using fluffy 123 for your Google password or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be smart about this if we're going to put sensitive information online. And then, yeah, health records, all of the financial stuff. So vehicle records, tax records, everything like that. The majority of it I manage, but Madeline needs that stuff somewhat frequently. And so we need a place that's very easy. And so that's what that family folder is for. And we don't have to share individually the financials folder, the health folder. You just put them in the family category and share that top level. And yeah, I've done it both ways, and it's much easier just to share the family folder.
I mean, I just think about too, like how much drama or resentment even that can save somebody who feels
Totally.
like they shoulder the majority of the mental load, and
Yes.
instead their partner is now undeniably equally responsible for accessing that information should they need to do so.
Hmm.
Right. I think that, for me, luckily my husband and I, we've found a great little balance, but there
Hmm.
is room for improvement in this area for
Sure.
sure. And I just think about our upcoming move. We're moving to Kodiak, Alaska this
Oh,
summer, which
right.
is a big move. And there's a lot of logistics there. And so we need our kids' vaccination records. We need my son's speech therapy results. We need all this stuff that we're going to be
Hmm.
transferring to new providers over in Alaska. We need the
Yes.
house information, all of this stuff. And so he's the one that kind of knows what we need, right? Because he's
Uh-huh.
working on that side logistically. And so the people he's working with, okay, we need X, Y, and Z. So then he emails me and is like, hey, can you send me, do you have like the last time Chai and Noma got their shots at the vet? Can you send me that? Or like, hey, could you email or when was their last checkup? Like, do you have that? Or do we need to make an appointment with the thing or whatever? And he's not trying to put anything on me. He's just looking for that information.
Right.
And if we had it all in one place, it wouldn't take that back and forth, and it would be a lot easier for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Listen,
Yeah.
this conversation, Shawn, I tell you what, it is one of those things. And this is how it is with decluttering too, though. And I hear this from people all the time. It feels so obvious when we have somebody give us a framework or explain things. And we're like, how did I not think of that? And that's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad. That's what I feel like is the majority of people are struggling with technology. It's an education problem, not as much a technical issue. It becomes a technical issue when you have been using Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, My Drive on a personal account, but then you created a business one and you've been collaborating with people here in this other place and storing it in the wrong spot. And then you've got stuff all over the place, and then we need to get ownership of everything, transferring. That's where it becomes a technical issue. And sometimes that's easy to solve yourself. Sometimes you run into something that you need professional help with because this is complex. But in the end, usually it's files and folders, but it's just giving you a framework of this is what you need to focus on. And this is the order. So pick a spot, consolidate, delete, archive. So it's like having this structured framework of this is a really efficient way to do it. And then being able to relax into the process because somebody, figured out the most efficient way and is giving you that framework. It may be, annoying work, but you're doing it at the most efficiently. And so, it's not as hard to keep up with it or keep going when you don't want to.
Right. Because this is the biggest thing. It's physical clutter or digital clutter. It's not going to go away on its own. Right. So we have to actually set aside the time and do it, even if it's tedious. Mm-hmm. We can't just want to do it. We have to actually do it. I think that's with the digital clutter for me, I'm feeling convicted about is that I can't just hope it goes away, but having someone like you kind of break down some of these very simple principles and options and, practical ways to do it certainly gets me moving and it's a lot easier to get moving, I should say. And the beauty of digital decluttering is you could do that from the couch while watching some TV show that, that you don't really have to pay attention to. Right now, mine is Traders. If I want to get something kind of done, and I'm usually not one for multitasking because both of those things then diminish in their how good you're doing at it. So I'm not going to be doing that while I'm actually trying to do something important. Yeah. But moving things from folder to folder doesn't take a whole lot of mental energy. Right. And I don't really care if I miss a conversation that's happening between traders on a reality show, and so I can put that on, I can get there and on my computer and just do this. And so I encourage anyone who's listening not to just hear this episode and say, man, that would be really nice. These are great ideas. But to actually sit down with your computer and do it because it is one of the decluttering tasks you can do while sitting down. Let's take advantage of that.
And it's not as hard as you think. It's not as big of a job as you think. And if you're given a framework, then and the ideas behind it, and it's okay, my job right now is just to go and consolidate everything. And that's a win, just to get it all in one place. That's just step one. Now, when you're ready to go on to step two, now you can start deleting stuff. And the more you do it, the more you're going to want to do it. So it's a heck of a lot easier than you think and won't take nearly as much time. It might feel like it takes longer than it actually does, but it's an hour. And then wow, it's actually all done.
Right? You're like, that was worth it. Why did I wait 20
Mm-hmm.
years to do this? Okay, I want to wrap up. I know this is in the guides and all of the resources, like we said,
Yeah.
will be in the show notes because this is the kind of episode that we just do need, additional resources and help
Yeah.
because it is a little bit more technical. But big picture here, interrupt me if and when I am wrong.
Okay.
First thing we do is, let's say we're doing emails. This
Mm-hmm.
would, I assume, apply to files or anything else. The first thing you do is get it all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Choose a platform or a place to have things. Okay. Second thing we do is we do a quick trash. Is that right? We just go through and trash
Yeah.
anything that's obvious. Third thing we do is anything that we are maybes, we just macro put those in one organizational folder without micro organizing them, just a maybe folder. Is that
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then step 4 would be to start going through and choosing specific categories for the things that are left and moving things into their categories. So whether it's family, and then under family would be medical, blah, da, 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
So like start with those bigger categories. You have family, you have work, and you have, I don't know what else is in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then go from there. Is that like the big picture, how to do it?
Yes. And then one more thing at the end for files would be picking a naming convention so that you're naming things consistently and you can identify what you're looking for simply by the name without ever having to open the file.
Oh, do you have a resource for that since we don't have
It's
time to
part
get
of that
into
guide.
naming?
Yeah,
Okay,
part of the
great.
guide.
Yes, because that is so important. I will say, because like for paring down, for instance, there's a couple different stages here. So after Shawn and I end our conversation, I will download this to my computer, and it's going to say RS_Shawn Lemon because we record on Riverside. So that's my unedited version. I then, don't make fun of me, I know I'm stuck in 2009. I upload it into iMovie and I do my editing in iMovie, which
That's
works
great.
great for me. And then when I export it, it now says final_Shawn Lemon. And then I go in and I create a 1-minute reel that I'm going to share on the internet. And then when I export that, it says real_Shawn Lemon. As I'm saying this out loud, recognizing I really should have it all start with Shawn Lemon and then underscore probably what it is. So I can just go and find all of yours. But so far, that's what I've done. And it works well because my naming is consistent throughout completely. So I know that if I'm looking for, the raw version versus the final version versus the whatever, I can go in and find it easily. And that has helped instead of just being like Shawn or interview or whatever. Like it's a clear naming structure.
Yeah, that's similar. I would probably date it first because sometimes you're like, oh, when was that? Or someone says, what was that episode? It was published on October of 24. Something along those lines. So you may want to put the date first and then maybe the category of what it is. So this is raw and then Shawn Lemon, that's a video. And then it would be, final and then reel and then have description of the reels. And so that way, when you're organizing alphabetically, you're also organizing chronologically, and then you can see what it is by a category and then a description at the end. So that's our typical framework. You can rearrange that however you want, but the reason why we do the date first is so that when you organize alphabetically, it's organizing chronologically. But then you've got the other pieces of information that you need. And when you do a really descriptive title like that, you don't need as many subfolders. And so you can create a more shallow folder structure instead of deep, meaning double click, double click, double click, double click, double click, double click,
Right. And then it's lost in oblivion in double clicks.
Exactly. And that's why people don't keep up with it. And then all of a sudden they just keep dumping stuff on their desktop. It's too deep. So, yeah.
That is so helpful. And I absolutely need to do that, not only for the episodes, but I'm thinking about, I have the same ads that come up all the time. And I'm like, which one did I record for HelloFresh in January? And which one did I record in February? And which one, you know what I mean? And I got to attach the right one to send to my podcast producer. So anyways, all right, enough about me and all of my background drama here. Thank you so much, Shawn. I think it goes without saying that this has been an entirely life-changing episode. And can you share once more where everyone can find all of this information, follow you along on social media, really anything to gather more of what you offer?
Yeah. So the website is thedigitalorganizer.com. So pretty easy to remember, organization and digital. You can go to that, thedigitalorganizer.com/paring down. That's how you can get that guide. That will send you an introduction to us. That's where you get the videos for clearing out your email and getting email under control. You can find us on social. And then, we'll send you an email on Sundays, which is just, really practical stuff that you can do, interesting stories and things like that.
Perfect. Yes, like you said, that will all be in the show notes. I shouldn't be surprised that you are so organized to have the link with my own podcast name to help my listeners. I mean, it's on brand. I tell you that much. Thank you, Shawn, for being here, for answering all my personal questions. And I know this is going to be helpful for the masses as well.
Thanks for having me, Shannon. This has been fun.
You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.